Hey everyone, we are now officially live. So, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Riding the Spectrum. In this live episode of the Off Road Campground podcast, I actually want to update you guys. I actually want to talk about something that a lot of us grew up with. And I want to discuss how Sabicides and off-roading vehicles have changed dramatically over the years. And bear with me, I just got back from a gig. I've been DJing for 6 hours. Yep, I'm a DJ, so I just got back home from a gig. But I just got around to doing this episode of the Off-Road Campground podcast here on Riding the Spectrum. But if we go over I'm going to say create a timeline of all the recreational off-road vehicles that were popular since the 90s. All right, so let's kind of go through the 1990s. So I asked ChatGPT to create a timeline, and we'll talk about this. So the timeline of popular recreational off-road vehicles since the 1990s. So in the 1990s, there were a lot of ATVs and dirt bikes. The 1990s were dominated by lightweight machines for trails, mud dunes, and motocross, which is why it's so popular today because it's been around for so long. Popular vehicle types is sport ATVs, four-wheelers, utility ATVs, two-stroke dirt bikes, and early side-by-sides, limited. So, let's kind of go over that. So, basically, what ChatGPT is saying that the 1990s, which was the decade I was born in, was dominated by lightweight machines built for trails, mud dunes, and motocross. And then early Savicides. And a lot of them are like, I know even here, I know we had a lot of early, like, I don't know what we're call them, where you would get in like a go-kart. Yeah, basically a go-kart, which is kind of the concept for the Sabicide. So if it wasn't for the side, if it wasn't for that, I'm gonna say, what were those things called with a cage, one seat, and a steering wheel from the 1990s and 2000s? Oh, the Dune Buggy Sand Trail, or the first generation of the Savicide UTV. Yeah, most recognizable cage style off road vehicles from the late 90s and early 2000s were early Savicide UTVs like the Rhino, the Polaris Ranger, and the Kawasaki Mule. Sand dune, dune buggies. These were lightweight, custom off road machines with roll cages, bucket seats, steering wheels, and rear mounted engines. That's probably what it is. Dune buggies. So that's what I'm thinking of. So yeah, the 1990s had the early Savicide or Doom buggies, if you want to call them. That's what they were basically called. And the iconic vehicles of that era in the 1990s were the Honda 4Trax 300, the Yamaha Banshee 350, Suzuki Quad Racer LT250R, Polaris Sportsman 500. So Polaris was still making vehicles in the 1990s. Honda CR250R, Yamaha YZ125, which I've never heard of these machines. So I never really got to experience them in the 90s since I was too young. And also, we had Power Wheels for a lot of toddlers. It was most in kids that were, Power Wheels. We had Power Wheels, which those were kind of like on a very small battery that it was all battery powered. So you pretty much had to charge them every so often. So Power Wheels were mainly for the kids, and for a lot of grown-ups back then, yeah, it was all the early side-by-sides, two-stroke dirt bikes, utility ATVs, and sport ATVs, which were known as four-wheelers. Off-road trends, yeah, two-stroke motocross racing exploded. ATV trail riding became the mainstream. Mud bogging and dune riding gained popularity, and 4x4 utility ATVs became popular with hunters and campers. So that was in the 1990s, which was kind of like I guess, the early days for side-by-sides, which they were called dune buggies, which are now called side-by-sides or UTVs, the early UTVs. As we go to the 2000s, the rise of the side-by-side, which are UTVs. The 2000s changed off-roading forever with the explosion of UTVs. Major trends, side-by-side utility vehicles became mainstream, which I do believe that, because we started seeing the Razor and all these other sport side-by-sides a decade later in the 2010s. So I guess I didn't miss out on a whole lot in terms of the early part of the side-by-side and having these go. They became really mainstream with the early part, the early side-by-sides in the 2000s. So we're talking 20 years ago. Bigger suspension and more power. Sand rails, dune buggies resurged. Jeep culture exploded online, which is great. Defining vehicles: the Polaris Ranger, the Yamaha Rhino, the Can-Am Outlander, the Jeep Wrangler TJ, Toyota Tacoma, Honda TRX 450R. And then for off-road culture, yeah, rock crawling became huge. Lift kits and mud tires became mainstream. ATV parks and off-road campgrounds exploded, and YouTube off-road content began growing. I've been part of that, not really that decade, but here in the 2020s. So if it wasn't for the 2000s, I wouldn't be, who I am today, making this type of content. So in the 2010s, high performance UTVs were in the golden age of fast side-by-side and overlanding. So we're talking, this was, so in the 2010s, yeah, high performance UTV revolution Yeah, the 2010s was also known as the high performance UTV revolution, where they were the golden age of fast side by sides and overlanding. Major trends for that decade is turbocharged UTVs, long travel suspension, overlanding at Meyer camping, off road influencer culture exploded. So over those 2 decades, as we're going to tell, that we went from rise of the side by sides, where they were just being born and gaining popularity amongst us off road enthusiasts, and everybody wanted to enjoy the great outdoors. So it really exploded within those 2 decades, from the 2000s to the 2010s, where we had the rise of the side by side. And then we, of course, a decade later, got the high performance side by sides or UTVs. And the popular vehicles for that decade was the Polaris RZR XP 1000, which is what I have. So I pretty much have an older model that's been around since the 2010s. The Can-Am Maverick X3, Ford F-150 Raptor, Jeep Wrangler JK, Toyota 4Runner, and Kawasaki TRX. So the 2010s saw the huge popularity of the Polaris RZR XP 1000, which is what I have, the Can-Am Maverick X3, and the Kawasaki TRX, maybe the KRX 1000. So we basically saw the TRX series come out in the 2010s. So it was the Can-Am Maverick X3 and the Polaris RZR XP 1000, which I have the 4-seater. So I have the XP4 1000. And Ultimate is the higher trim level, where you get like ride command, you get a lot of the stuff that's not on the sport model or the trail model. And then life-changing lifestyle changes, where it was rooftop tents become trendy, LED light bars everywhere, off-road expos and jamboree expanded, adventure vloggers boosted the hobby, and it got really big over then. But yeah, if you think about the 2010s, yeah, the lifestyle change as well, with rooftop tents became trendy, LED light bars everywhere, and off-road expos and jamborees expanded, and adventure vloggers boosted the hobby, which means that off-roading videos and stuff became more and more popular with the popularity of the Polaris RZR XP 1000, the Can-Am Maverick X3, and the Kawasaki TRX, especially the KRX 1000, because they have a blackout edition where it was fully loaded, and it's all blacked out, and it was incredible. But then I got the XP 1000 because it was the only fully loaded side by side that was there. The rest were like base model side by sides at the time. And then fast forward to this decade, the 2020s, smart tech, overlanding, and electric off roading. Modern off roading combines technology, luxury, and extreme capability. Current trends, yeah, smart suspension systems, GPS integrated trail riding, electric off road vehicles, factory built overland rigs, and adventure tourism and campground culture. So those are the current trends today in this decade: is smart suspension systems, GPS integrated trail riding, electric off-road vehicles, factory built overland rigs, and then adventure tourism and campground culture, where I guess a lot of off-road parks started to explode with their own campground. Popular modern vehicles is the Ford Bronco, Jeep Gladiator, Can-Am Maverick X, the Can-Am Maverick R, the Polaris RZR Pro R, the Rivian R1T Tesla Cybertruck grows. I don't know why it's popular. Those things are just awful. And a Yamaha YZ1000R. What defines this era right here in the 2020s? Massive off-road social media communities. Yeah, campground and trail resort grow. So the hybrid of a campground and a trail resort, they exploded. I mean, if you look at places like um, Riverneck Acres and Carolina Adventure World, those exploded and they became more and more popular once the sport, grew, as well as family-friendly UTV adventures, especially with four-seater side-by-sides. You can ride with a small family, and you get a good chunk of people into there and go riding. Electric and hybrid experimentation, luxury off-road builds. Basically from this chart is ATVs and dirt bikes, and the off-road culture is motocross and mud riding. In the 2000s, there was utility UTVs and Jeeps. Off-road culture is rock crawling and trail parks. And then the 2010s became trending. It became known for the high performance UTVs, for the culture being overlanding and YouTube culture. 2020s tech heavy and electric rigs, adventure lifestyle and camping. Yeah, biggest industry shift since the 90s. We went from ATVs to UTV dominance, analog machines to GPS smart tech, simple camping and luxury overlanding, local trails and destination off-road resorts like Riverneck and Carolina Adventure World and other places like that have a campground. Those became really, really popular. Gas only to electric experimentation. So they're experimenting on different electric golf or different electric side by sides. So that's basically all of it. So what I really want to talk about is that I remember seeing a lot of earlier dune buggies and carts around a lot. I mean, I haven't tried it out before, but um, things have changed since the 90s. But if you think about it, we've really come a long way since the early days where the most dominant was four wheelers and dirt bikes. Then went to the rise of the side by side, the early side by sides, even with dune buggies and different types of dune buggies. To the early part of the side by side, like the Polaris Razor and the Can-Am Maverick, the Kawasaki, and the Yamaha Wolverine, and all these other side by side manufacturers, even with CF Moto and all these big side by side manufacturers, have really grown a lot since then. And when I asked what are the things called with a cage, one seat, and a steering wheel from the 1990s and 2000s. We're thinking of early dune buggy, sand rail, or the first generation side by side UTVs. The most recognizable cage style of off road vehicles from the late 90s, early 2000s were the Yamaha Rhino. I've never seen a Yamaha Rhino. The Polaris Ranger. Oh, they were more UTV than sporty. And the Kawasaki Mule. No, I didn't even see those. Sand rail and dune buggies. Yeah, these were lightweight custom off-road machines with roll cages, bucket seats, steering wheels, and so that's what I was thinking of: sand rail / dune buggies. Popular examples are the Volkswagen-based dune buggy. You might have seen this in shows like Drake and Josh. If you look at the dune buggy, sand rail. Yeah, this probably was the sand rail. Those are all. That's what it is—a sand rail, which kind of laid down the concept for the Saba side. The Yamaha Rhino is usually the vehicle most people remember from that era because it helped launch the modern side by side craze before machines like the Polaris RZR and the Can Am Maverick took over in the 2010s. So the Rhino, so it really helped with early side by sides like the Polaris Razor and the Can Am Maverick. But I think that's what I was thinking of sand rails. They were a lightweight, high performance off road vehicle designed specifically for driving on loose sand, dunes, and desert terrain. Categorized by its exposed tubular steel frame, and it emphasizes power to weight efficiency, traction, and agility over comfort or road sand rails are purpose built rather than adapted from existing cars, making them central to dune racing and extreme off road recreation. That's probably what I've seen a lot, around, or the sand rails. So the Rhino is what most people might remember because it helped launch the Polaris Razor as well as the Can-Am Maverick. So if it wasn't for the Yamaha Rhino, we wouldn't have the Polaris Razor or the Can-Am Maverick to this very day, or we won't even have other competition like the Kawasaki TRX, KRX series, and we won't have the CF Moto, Z Force series. We would never have all of these amazing side by side models that were somewhat popular today, if you come to think about it. So this episode is all about, looking back at the past and seeing how much things have changed since then. So we had sand rails to dune buggies to the early side by sides, which were the foundation for the modern side by side that we have now, like the Polaris Razor, the Can-Am Maverick, everything happened because of what happened during my childhood. Yeah. But if you think about it, that was incredible. Like, it really laid down the foundation for what we now know as the Savicide, the UTV. I mean, if you come to think about it, if it wasn't for what happened in my childhood, laying down the ground for a lot of the, early Savicides, like the Polaris Razor, the Can-Am Maverick, the Yamaha Wolverine, the Kawasaki TRX, KRX series of Savicides, to the CF Moto Z Force 950 Sport, or the entire lineup of the Z Force, or a lot of the Segways. A lot of this stuff wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for those Sanrails, Sanrail vehicles, to Sanrail, early dune buggies in the early part of the early Savicides. So it really helped change and pave the way for the future, if you come to think about it. But I just cannot believe how amazing it is to look back at 30 years. I'd say what they were like in the 80s. Probably not that mature yet in the 80s. What was off-roading like in the 80s? Off-roading in the 1980s. Ooh, we can even go back to the 1980s. Off-roading in the 1980s. Yeah, the 1980s off-roading scene was raw, mechanical, muddy, and much more do-yourself compared to today's high-tech off-road culture. What defined the 1980s off-roading: solid axle 4x4 trucks, calibrated engines, manual transmissions, home lift kits, steel bumpers and winches, trail riding and mud bogging, desert racing culture growing fast. There was no GPS. There were no GPS trail apps, LED light bars, or luxury overland rigs yet. Just simple machines and rugged trails. But off-road trucks and SUVs like the CJ7 from Jeep, the Toyota Land Cruiser J60, the Toyota pickup trucks, Ford Bronco, Chevrolet K5 Blazer, the Suzuki Samurai, but there were ATV and three-wheelers as well in the 1980s, with the Honda ATC 250R, the Yamaha Tri-Z 250, Suzuki Quad Runner, dirt bikes like the Honda CR500R, Yamaha YZ 490, Kawasaki KX 250. But off-road culture in the 1980s. Mud bogging became massive. People modified pickup trucks with giant mud tires, lift kits, snorkels, and homemade suspension setups. Before four-wheel ATVs took over, this was in the 1990s, three wheels dominated: fast, lightweight, extremely unstable. Yeah. By the late 1980s, safety concerns led to their decline for the three-wheeler. So this was before four-wheelers came around. So basically, off-road culture became what it is today in the 1990s. Baja and desert racing grew. Events like the Baja 1000 became legendary and inspired off-road truck culture, which I think is pretty neat. considering this was the 1980s. Rock crawling was primitive. Unlike modern crawlers, few purpose-built rigs existed. Most people modified regular trucks. Lockers and specialty suspension were rare. Camping was simpler. No rooftop tents or overland kitchens. Most people slept in tents, camped beside trucks, cooked over fires, carried coolers and basic gear. Big difference between the 1980s and today. Carburetors, fuel injection, 1980s were carburetors, and today we have fuel injection and tuning apps. Paper maps, where today we have GPS trail navigation. Homemade builds, factory off-road packages for today. Simple camping in the 1980s and luxury overlanding is today. Mostly trucks and bikes for the 1980s. And today it's dominated by the UTV. Basic suspension from the 1980s and smart electronic suspension today. While people still love the 1980s off-roading, most enthusiasts still consider the 1980s the golden age because vehicles were simpler to repair, trails were less crowded, builds feel more professional, off-roading was more adventurous and less commercialized. That era heavily influenced today's retro-inspired vehicles like the modern Ford Bronco and Toyota Land Cruiser. So it really changed the way we go off-roading forever. So that's basically 40 years of evolution for off-roading and where we are today, especially going from just regular old off-road vehicles that you would buy every day at a dealership and can, drive almost all the time, where the 1990s, a decade later, would be dominated by the ATV and four-wheelers, and of course dirt bikes. The 2000s, and of course the 1990s was also dominated by the early UTVs, sandbar, or I think it's sandbars, and also the early side-by-sides, dune buggies. And then the 2000s was the rise of the side-by-side. The 2010s was all about high performance, and this decade's become more smarter than ever before, especially with things like the Polaris RZR and the Can-Am Maverick and all of them having infotainment screens, becoming smarter than ever. And I wonder how music has changed for off-roading since then. I guess there was no music until off-roading radios came along. But I guess I can ask, how has this changed listening to music off-road? How has all this changed listening to music on the trail? How music on the trail has changed since the 1980s. I mean, I guess it all comes down to, off-roading culture and music have evolved together. The way writers and drivers listen to music is completely different from analog trail experiences in the 1980s and 90s. The 1980s, boomboxes, CB radios, and cassette tapes. In the 1980s, trail music was simple and rugged. People used portable boomboxes, truck cassette decks, CB radios, AM/FM radio, and a homemade speaker setup. common music styles: southern rock, country, classic rock, and hair metal. Artists like AC/DC, Leonard Skinner, Hank Jr., Van Halen were common trail soundtrack choices. Trail atmosphere. Yeah, music usually stayed at campgrounds because vehicles weren't quiet enough for quality sound. Electronics weren't waterproof, and power systems were basic. 1990s CD players and ATV culture. So for the 1990s, they introduced CD players and trucks, portable CD players, aftermarket audio, and ATV riding playlists. Music trends is country, grunge, hip hop, and new metal. And then these are artists like Garth Brooks, Metallica, Nirvana, and Tupac. All dominated the 1990s. Problems with that era, CD players skipped constantly on rough trails. That's why many off-roaders still prefer cassettes, radio, and simple internal speakers. But this is where things got different. The 2000s MP3 players, iPods, and UTV audio. But if we look at the 2000s, the era transformed trail music. Huge changes like MP3 players, burnt CDs, iPods, aux cords, and better 12-volt accessories. Side by sides changed everything. Vehicles like the Yamaha Rhino, made it easy to install roof speakers, subwoofers, and marine audio systems. Music trends is country, rap, southern rock revival, early EDM, crunk, and party music. Now I know why I play this music a lot at my gigs as a DJ because it was popular when I was, younger, especially on the trail. I guess I didn't spend my childhood on the trail, but I spent a lot of time outside. Artists often heard at mud parks: Kid Rock, Lil Jon, and Jason Aldean. The 2010s is when it got even simpler. Bluetooth streaming and festival vibes. The 2010s made trail riding social and connected. New technology: Bluetooth speakers, smartphone playlists, Spotify, Apple Music, LED audio systems, and soundbars for UTVs. Or, off road events became parties. Many parks started to feel like outdoor music festivals, tailgates, and mobile DJ events. Popular genres are EDM, country, trap, pro country, and party remixes. Artists like Florida Georgia Line, Avicii, and Luke Bryan. 2020 smart audio and social media soundtracks. Today's off-road experience is heavily tied to technology and content creation. Modern trail audio is waterproof Bluetooth ecosystems, roof-mounted speakers, roof-mounted speaker bars, out-controlled audio, integrated GPS and music displays, wireless CarPlay and Android Auto. Music is part of the brand. People now create writing reels, YouTube videos, TikToks, and drone footage synced to music. Current music trends, in this decade is country, EDM, hip hop, rock, punk, and viral TikTok songs. Modern off road rigs often have audio systems louder than small clubs. Popular vehicles for custom audio is the Polaris Razor Pro R, the Can-Am Maverick R, and the Jeep Gladiator. A big culture shift in the 80s and 90s, music supported the adventure, and today music is often part of the experience itself. Modern off-road parks sometimes feel like concerts, festivals, social media events, and campground parties. What about when hip hop became popular with artists like the Georgia Boys? Because this defines a lot of off-road culture. It mixes in country with hip hop. It goes from it's basically southern hip hop. Yeah, the Georgia Boys. Let's see who else is in my hip hop playlist. Hip hop. There we go. Hip hop. Yeah, the Georgia Boys, the Lax, Lenny Cooper. We can do a whole, you know, I guess we can do a whole episode about hip hop and how it's changed off-road culture. Moccasin Creek, Moccasin Creek, Tennessee Shine, Tennessee Shine, Bottleneck, Colt Ford, which I know he became popular in the late 2000s, early 2010s with Mud Digger. Yellow Wolf, Bubba Sparks, Bubba Sparks, Moonshine Bandits, Moonshine Bandits, and Young Gunner. And Young Gunner. There we go. The rise of hip hop and mud park music culture, late 2000s to 2010s. Hip hop completely changed soundtrack. Yeah, hip hop completely changed the soundtrack of off road culture, especially in the Southeast. By the late 2000s and early 2010s, mud parks, ATV rallies, and off road campgrounds started developing their own music identity. This was the era when lifted trucks got bigger, LED whips and sound systems exploded, mud parks became weekend party destinations, social media helped underground artists spread fast. What is hip hop? Hip hop blended country, southern rock, hip hop, and mud lifestyle culture, off road and hunting references. The music connected directly with mud boggers, ATV rides, Jeep owners, side by side riders, and rural campground culture. The artists that defined the era. The Georgia Boys, known for mud truck culture, Southern lifestyle anthems, songs blasting at every mud park in the early 2010s. And even today, tracks like Mud Diggin', Rolling Like a Redneck. I like that one. Yeah, buddy, rolling like a redneck. Became almost mandatory off road party music. The Lax, one of the biggest names in hip hop, themes, tailgates, campfires, trucks, dirt roads, and country partying. They helped bring country rap into the mainstream mud scene. Ooh. Lenny Cooper, very connected to truck and mud culture, known for Mud Diggers, Southern Pride anthems, collaborations with off road artists. Moccasin Creek, here we go. Darker rock influence, southern country rap style, tied heavily to mudding and rural culture. Bottleneck focused heavily on mud trucks, southern lifestyle, and trail riding culture. Yellow Wolf brought a more polished southern alternative style into the scene. He connected hip hop, skate culture, southern rock culture, and outlaw country influence. Tracks like Pop the Trunk and Daddy's Lambo became crossover hits. Bubba Sparks, one of the earliest mainstream artists blending rural southern themes with rap. Songs like Deliverance, Miss New Booty helped pave the way before hip hop fully exploded. Moonshine Bandits blended outlaw country, rock, rap, and backwoods party culture. Very popular at campground festivals, off road rallies, and truck meets. The Mud Park era, from about 2010 to 2016, many mud parks transformed into weekend festivals, tailgate parties, stereo competitions, and campground concert environments. Popular activities included mud bogging, night rides, golf cart parties, and burnout pits, and audio competitions. Technology helped hip hop explode. Yeah, technology helped hip hop explode. Why the music spread so fast? YouTube mud videos were, yeah, mud videos with hip hop soundtracks exploded online. Bluetooth and aux cables, people could find control music easily on the trails. UTV audio systems, machines like the Polaris Race and the Can-Am Maverick began rolling speaker systems. Facebook mud groups, regional off-road communities shared playlists, event flyers, writing videos, and artist promotions. Why hip hop connected so deeply. The music reflected small town life, southern identity, mud riding, hunting and fishing, campground partying, and DIY truck culture. So basically, hip hop is mainly for truckers, who ride pickup trucks, but not side by sides, unless you're listening to In My Razor. And for many off roaders, this became their generation soundtrack in the same way classic rock defined the 1980s, grunge and country defined the 1990s. The legacy of hip hop era, even today, you still hear artists like, yeah, even today, you still hear these artists at mud parks, off road campgrounds, truck meets, side by side events, and country tailgates. the genre helping the genre also helped influence newer artists mixing country, trap, rock, and southern rap. In today's off-road social media culture, the era making excellent dedicated okay. How about what are the artists still listening to? What are the artists in the 2020s for hip hop. For hip hop, yeah, I don't know how this. What hip hop artists, yeah, hip hop artists are people still listening to today in the 2020s, even though most of this music's from the 2000s and 2010s, especially the songs I'm put in my playlist. Oh, here we go. Hip hop artists still popular in the 2020s, even though the original hip hop boom peaked in the late 2000s to early 2010s. A lot of these artists are still having a strong following at mud parks, truck meets, side by side events, campground festivals, and TikToks as real edits, tailgates, the scene involved, but the core audience never completely disappeared. Artists still commonly played today: Yellow Wolf, popular, probably the artist from that era with the biggest lasting crossover appeal. Why he still lasts, he blended Southern culture with modern hip hop, appeals beyond just mud culture, strong independent fan base, and still active musically. Songs still heard. Okay, and he lists the songs that are still being played today. He also influenced newer Southern alternative artists. The Lax are still being played. Yeah, still heavily played at mud parks, bonfire parties, and off road campgrounds. Their style aged well because it focused on partying, trucks, country lifestyle, and tailgates. They still tour and release music, and a lot of these, a lot of these people you can still find playing at these campgrounds, while you're going riding. Georgia Boys. Why do I still see the Georgia Boys? Let's see. Yeah, the Lax still heavily played at mud parks, bonfire parties, and off-road campgrounds. So at a lot of these off-road campgrounds, still today, I guess you're still hearing this music, and they're putting on concerts at these off-road campgrounds, which is amazing. The Georgia Boys, oh, they still tour and release music from the Lax. The Georgia Boys, still extremely nostalgic for millennial off-roading culture. Mud Diggin' remains one of the biggest mud park anthems ever. You still hear them in burnout competitions, mudding reels, and lifted truck edits. Moonshine Bandits, still relevant because they lean into outlaw country, rock influence, and festival culture. They built a loyal fan base that followed them into the streaming era. Bubba Sparks, most respected now as an early pioneer. He's often viewed as one of the artists who helped lay the foundation for country rap, roll hip hop, and hip hop crossover culture. Lenny Cooper, still associated heavily with truck culture, money nostalgia, and southern off road playlists, especially among people who grew up in the early 2010s mud scene. Artists that helped carry the genre forward. The newer generation blends hip hop, country trap, southern rock, and TikTok or country. Artists connected to the evolution include Upchurch, Bradley Gilbert, Harley, and Colt Ford. These artists help bridge old mud park culture, newer country rock audiences, and southern or social media truck culture. Why people still listen to hip hop for nostalgia. For millennials, this was high school music, mud park music, tailgate music, and weekend riding soundtrack. It represents a very specific era of Southern off road culture. The lifestyle never went away. Even with us buying Sabbath sides, it still keeps the culture alive, and we still listen to this kind of stuff. The lifestyle never went away, even though trends changed. Lifted trucks, campground parties, Sabbath side riding, bonfires, country nightlife are still huge, which I do believe because we're still buying these Sabbath sides from these dealerships, and we're going off roading Sabbath, from time to time, and yeah, social media revived older songs. Um, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, and Instagram Reels brought back money edits, burnout videos, and trail riding clips using older hip hop tracks. And then the overall legacy, hip hop became the soundtrack for the Mud Park era, part of the Southern off road identity, a bridge between country and hip hop culture. Even though even though mainstream popularity faded, the genre still survives strongly in off-road communities, truck culture, campground nightlife, and southern festival scenes. For many people, hearing a song from the Georgia Boys or the Lax instantly brings back memories of mud tires, LED whips, late night trail rides, campground parties, lifted trucks covered in mud. Are there still artists making new songs today, keeping the genre alive? Because I don't know. Because a lot of the songs on my playlist are mainly from the 2010s. Because I know a lot of these, yes, the genre is definitely smaller than its peak Mud Park era, but there are still artists actively among new music and keeping hip hop, country rap alive in the 2020s. But here we go. Yes, the genre is definitely smaller than peak Mud Park era, but there are still artists actively making new music, keeping hip hop, country rap alive in the 2020s. The sound has evolved through less MySpace Mud Park, more country rock trap fusion, more independent streaming artists, and more TikTok, YouTube driven fan bases. Are still carrying hip hop into the 2020s. Upchurch, probably the biggest modern evolution of hip hop. He moved beyond pure mud music into country rock, rap, and southern outlaw music. He still releases albums constantly and maintains a massive independent fan base. Songs like Holler Boys, Rolling Stone, and Outlaw became huge crossover hits. The Lax, the Lax are still making music, still actively touring and releasing music in 2026. Their audience is still heavily connected to mud parks, truck meets, and off-road campgrounds, southern party culture. They've become almost a legacy act for the genre. Moonshine Bandits, still active and still considered one of the foundational hip hop grounds or hip hop groups. Moonshine Bandits, still active and considered one of the foundational hip hop groups. Their newer music leans more outlaw country, Americana, and rock influenced country rap than early party style hip hop. Adam Calhoun, one of the biggest modern country rap artists, his style mixes aggressive southern rap, country themes, political/cultural commentary, outlaw branding. He helped keep the independent country rap scene commercially viable through YouTube and direct fan support. Demian Jones, very connected to the old average Joe's entertainment scene, still among popular among ATV riders, truck culture fans, campground crowds, and southern outdoor communities. Struggle Jennings brought a darker outlaw country influence into the scene. He helped push country rap closer towards outlaw country, southern rock, and Americana storytelling. Bottleneck, still releases music and collaborates within the independent country rap scene. New artists influenced by hip hop. The genre also evolved into what many call country trap, roll rap, and outlaw country rap. Artists influenced by hip hop culture include Hardy, Bradley Gilbert, Jelly Roll, and Colt Ford. Ooh, these artists aren't always hip hop in the original sense, but they carry parts of southern rap, truck culture, country rock energy, and outlaw imagery into mainstream country music. Wow, it's really changed. The genre never fully died. It mostly went independent, moved online, merged with country rock and trap, become more of a niche more than a loyal, I guess, fan base. You still hear these artists at side-by-side parks, truck shows, campground festivals, Jeep events, mud bogs, and tailgate parties. And playlists with artists like The Lax, Moonshine Bandits, and Upchurch are still actively shared on streaming platforms today. I mean, basically everything has evolved. I really need to start building out my hip hop playlist and adding more of the more newer stuff and really get into the more modern stuff. So basically, like everything with the ATVs, everything has really changed. So that was a prime example is hip hop, because it's kind of changed, and also listen to music, everything changes. So we went from, we basically went from, let's have a look at the 1980s. So in the 1980s, it was mostly off road trucks. So I guess off roading culture wasn't as big in the 1980s as it was in the 1990s, especially with the vehicles that we use today in 2026. That's basically all I'm trying to say here with hip hop, this whole hip hop thing where everything has changed. The actual hip hop has come and gone, but it's changed in a way that things have changed, which is crazy to think about. I mean, come to think about it, in the 1980s, off-roading culture was just beginning with trucks and SUVs mainly, because I don't think they had many smaller trail riding vehicles that have this kind of stuff. So yeah, we went from the ATV and dirt bike boom in the 1990s to the rise of the side by side in the 2000s to high performance UTV revolution in the 2010s, where everything is smart tech, outlanding, and electric off roading for the 2020s. So we went from ATVs and dirt bikes in the 90s, UTVs, Jeeps in the 2000s, high performance ones in the 2010s, and the 2020s tech heavy and electric rigs. So we went from ATVs to UTVs. This is for the dominance, where ATVs were pretty much dominant in the 1990s to UTVs becoming dominant in the 2000s and 2010s, even the 2020s. Simple camping and luxury to luxury local trails to destination off-road resorts to from gas to electric. And also, we had dune buggies, sand rails, and early first generation side by sides. And just like everything else, it has changed in the way we, because I know a lot of us might remember all this. This is basically what I'm trying to say, is that everything has changed, and a lot of this stuff comes to an end. But a lot of the stuff keeps on going, especially with ATVs, which the four wheelers, and of course dirt bikes. Yeah.
Did you want to ride?
Yeah.
And what you doing?
I'm coming.
All
right.
Bye.
Fine. So yeah, guys, just like everything, things come to an end, and some things might even stay. With ATVs and four wheelers, they've been popular for 30 years now, and they're even popular than ever. Even with side by sides, just having a little bit more of a sport type of thing. So, just like everything, like Hip Hop and the evolution of our different off-roading vehicles, things change, things get different. So, with that said, we'll see you guys next time. Peace.